My brain is a supercomputer. And I'm going to give you guys in this live stream and in every live stream and every video, my brain as it stands as a supercomputer relative to TRT. Based on the questions that you have. Is everything working right? Everybody? Hope you guys are great. Hope you've had a good weekend so far. We're finally transitioning into truly spring. You can tell because the days where it's sunny outside, it truly is a fully sunny day, and everything is just lit up with the sun, and you feel that summer like heat creeping in. We've got a day that I think we're going to be in the 90s in the next few days. So finally, we're coming around. It took Pittsburgh a long time to get here because like April had some 70-degree days and then had some 50-degree days and had some mornings where it was 45. And it was just like, this is happening in April. It's a fuck, bro. Such a weird place. I talked to a client recently who lives in Florida, and I was like, you know what? How do you deal with how sweltering it gets? And he goes, well, the problem is just the humidity, as everybody knows, and you just get used to it. You just get used to it, man. I'm looking forward to the summer because I like wearing sandals and shorts and being able to walk outside and do things. But I'm not a huge fan of super heat. So, you know, it comes with its like pros and its cons. And I guess we'll have to see, brother. Otherwise, just some news on coaching. Again, 3 and 6 month packages are fully booked. I booked now 28 in the month of April and in the beginning of May. So those are down for the moment. I can't really keep them on the website. If you need coaching, you can email me and I'll consider it. I just cannot leave it on the website for 20 more people to book. I will be past capacity at that point. So please keep that in mind. There are 2 new products, the TRT Protocol Audit and the Sexual Function Consult, though, that are available at livecortex.com. And I guess that's it. So I don't know if some of you saw this, but we had a interaction in the comments section with Dr. Keith Nichols on the channel where I think it was on like one of the recent videos that I discussed regarding the sweet spot in estrogen, where Keith was sort of beefing with some of you in the comment section. And I do want to make clear, like, whether Dr. Nichols and I agree specifically on estrogen. I think everything else we're clear on. I think, Nichols makes the assertion that estrogen is not the problem with sexual dysfunction on TRT, and it asserts it's serotonin, which we can eventually talk about. But I want to make it clear to the channel that, listen, if a medical doctor, regardless of whether you agree with their stance on TRT, estrogen, or whatever, is on our channel, interacting with the channel. I love that you guys seemingly were defending me against what you thought might have been an attack or whatever, but we have to keep it respectful. That guy has clinical experience that spans many years, and we cannot just discount the guy's clinical experience. I mean, all of us that are TRT people, whether coaches or MDs that are prescribing entities in the actual medical orthodoxy, we're all just in our own different way within our constraints attempting to help men on TRT get dialed in, So that's a respectable thing to do. So if Nichols or any of these guys that I may have disagreed with in the past or that we may not see eye to eye on things ends up on the channel commenting, just be respectful of that guy and anybody else in that situation. All right. I think it's really, really important. Now, I don't know if you guys actually saw this too, but Dr. Keith Nichols did a big, long lecture. Looks like it's about 3 hours long, three hours and some change long, about TRT, and mainly focused on trying to disprove that aromatase inhibitors are useful for men on TRT and that fix problems, and also trying to highlight the culprit of sexual dysfunction on TRT. And, positing some of the same arguments that we've heard from that camp in the past, where, using the example of the amount of estradiol located in the cerebral spinal fluid, it does not correlate with the amount in the serum, and then making the extrapolation that the serum is not a surrogate, an accurate surrogate for what's happening at the tissue level. It is one specific element of physiology as an example that is true. We haven't really looked at any other area, so I don't think we can actually say that. But you guys, you should go over to Dr. Keith Nichols' channel. It's like Tier 1 something or other. Or just type in Dr. Keith Nichols, TRT, estrogen, aromatase inhibition. You'll probably find it's a 3.5 hour long lecture or something to this effect. And, you'll see that he ultimately tries to make the contention that we should not be determining routes of action or norms on how men should approach TRT from a perspective that isn't backed up from the scientific literature, but also make some contentions that are not backed up by the scientific literature. The predominant of them is that the cause of sexual dysfunction on TRT is serotonin, which is not backed up by the scientific literature. I mean, yes, TRT, estradiol especially, but testosterone to a lesser extent, does modulate serotonin in the way of increasing expression of receptors and serotonin, the SERT, the serotonin transporter expression, among other things. And serotonin is absolutely positively fucking counter to sexual function. We see that in the people that have PSSD and have taken SSRIs, but there's a lot of holes in that argument. Like, okay, so what do? You take a serotonin receptor antagonist, we just take cyproheptadine and that solves the problem, rather than dealing with the estrogen. The other contention he makes is that estrogen is not the direct cause of sexual dysfunction on TRT. And it's an indirect facilitator of serotonergic transmission, which causes sexual dysfunction. But the way that he posits the argument says that the literature does not support direct erectile effects from estradiol, and there's substantial evidence that estradiol affects penile smooth muscle, nitric oxide signaling, sympathetic tone, venous leak physiology, especially the venous occlusive function, cholinergic signaling, endothelial function, dopamine D2 receptor signaling. So you can't quite make that statement. So I will make an actual official scientific response to Keith Nichols' thing with a bunch of counter arguments that are backed up by the scientific literature, and I think that'll be really useful for the community. I think it's useful that Keith posted what he posted because he said a lot of things that are true and that are accurate and that are good for everybody to know. That's why I think people should watch it. But this is such a long-standing semi-disagreement between camps that it has to be addressed from both sides, because that's the, that's gentleman's rules, man. So we're going to get to it. Cummingsdale. Great question. Great fucking name, dude. I purchased the Mastering Testosterone Cream video. Awesome job. Wondering how long it will take for my body to get acclimated to switching from injection to cream. Probably about a month. I mean, in all honesty, once you even get to steady state, you have to give time for your body to adjust. Like whether it's cream or it's cypionate, the way that you feel, even once you reach steady state versus how you'll feel 3 weeks later is different. I've seen these weird cases where, when somebody is officially at steady state, libido erections will be good for a week, and then for 3 or 4 days, things start to regress, and they start thinking, "Oh shit, I've gone past my window. Maybe estrogen's too high, DHT's too high, too low, something else is happening," and then they just did nothing, and then it came back in the window, right, and things resolved. So, at least a month. At least a month. The beautiful thing about testosterone cream is that at that point, after you've been at pretty much steady state for 30 days, you can then make changes, and relatively quickly thereafter, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you'll be able to realize if those changes are good. And in some cases, much sooner. Like if you make a change to increase the dose and it sends you in the other direction in terms of erections or something, like very quickly, and stays that way for 2 straight weeks, that's probably not the change to make. So I'd say give it some time. I don't know the details of your protocol, so I couldn't really give you any, more detailed response than that. Incredible saying an increase in fullness, blood in the organ and libido. Not sure what you're looking. Not sure what you're referring to here because I do not see the rest of your question. And for some reason, I don't see all the questions. Yeah, I got to restart my chat real quick. Just give me a second. Brothers. Okay. We'll get the pop out going again. We'll snatch that little code right there. Bring it in here. This happens sometimes where the chat just miraculously goes, or mysteriously, I should say, just fucking goes awry. Are we back? Okay. Cummingsdale, when switching from injections to cream, I don't like that low T feeling. Yeah, this is why you should front load. And after about 45 days, and I always know switch back to injections. Yeah, you should front load. That's what you should do. That's precisely what I did. I moved from a dialed in transcranial cream protocol to testosterone cypionate and dialed that in about 2.5, 3 weeks because I front loaded 170 milligrams at once. If you go to steroidplotter.com and you try to determine what the front load dose is, and I've done a descriptive instructional video on how to front load testosterone to get to steady state faster. There's still going to be some receptor dynamics and sex hormone binding globulin and otherwise free hormone dynamics that take some time to adjust to your new protocol, but you can dial in a hell of a lot faster. So I didn't go through that. Switching from cream to cypionate, it's like one day I was dosing cream. The very next day I injected 170 milligrams of cypionate. And then also that day I started my protocol of 50 milligrams every other day. So that is what I suggest you do. It's still going to take 3 weeks for you to really realize where you're at, and you might have to make some minor adjustments thereafter depending on how targeted your initial dose strategy was. And that's just it, brother. I got a super chat here. See, now the chat isn't working. Okay, there it is. Hector, thanks for the $5, bro. On 16 milligrams test sip daily, I was at 991 total. Okay, so right, you hovered right around there. Got it. But so what are you saying that on this is important distinction to talk about how kinetics of the testosterone esters, in this case cypionate, do matter. Sometimes they trounce the significance of bloods. This guy's at 1,000 total tests with E2 of 35. That should be pretty goddamn good, for libido and erections. Yeah, I mean, right there, I would be in a great place. My body prefers above 1,000, right around 1,000 for good erectile quality. And this is precisely where I'd fall. Now, I have HCG in my system too. It's not a lot at this point. It's 100 IU a day. But I'm falling reasonably close to here, 1160, 1170, 1130, depending on, fluctuations, on E2 of 40, 37 to 42. And I'm doing great. You lowered it to 14 milligrams and libido and energy sucked. You're going to start injecting every 5 days. So what are you saying here? I mean, what I think you might be saying is that on those bloods, you didn't feel great. You didn't have the great sexual function is what I'm surmising from what you're saying here. And if that is the case, you probably need to be around those same numbers, but you got to figure out how to inject more testosterone at once. Yeah, again, if the blood isn't an accurate surrogate, if it isn't an accurate surrogate for what's happening at the tissues, you can look like everything's great here, but behind the scenes, something isn't right. So, and usually in these cases, that is the kinetics, the oil depot pharmacology is something that no one's really ever talked about or broken down, but I've brought that to the light of the TRT community to have people understand that if you have a micro droplet from a daily injection versus a marginally bigger droplet from an every other day injection versus a significantly bigger oil depot, I should call them, from an every third day injection, the amount of androgen receptor activation and gene expression, long-lasting DHT sitting at the androgen receptor, failing to disassociate, which it does, is different, right? So you might need to inject every 5 days. But, if I were you, I would switch first to every other day. Keep the protocol the same. That is exactly what I would do. Go back to 16 because those numbers are pretty good. Go to every other day. What you're probably going to find is that the E2 is going to go up to 37 to 42, maybe 45, but total test can be at 1100 or something. And there you might find your sweet spot. And if you don't, and you have like a spongy, fluffy penis at that point, and you can't get erect, but you have libido, that will be the point to lower the dose, but keep the every other day frequency. And if all of that fails, then you go to every third day. Yeah. Went back to 5/8 inch, 27 pins, 3x a week versus the everyday 1/2 inch. Feeling better after 2 weeks. Thanks for the vid. Yeah, pretty common. I mean, there's just some people who they're going to get a better response from TRT when they inject it in the vascular tissue, and when they do it less frequently. 3 times a week is a very reasonable frequency for TRT. Very reasonable. A lot of people that fail on daily injection despite good-looking labs are just going to end up doing better, injecting 3 times a week or every third day, every other day, something like that. So, yeah, and this is the same dose. I mean, again, this tells you that the dose itself, the way you split it up, changes completely how the effects, are. So this is why I'm such an advocate for I'm not saying you should inject less frequently or you should inject daily. I'm not in the camp of either or bias for either. I'm saying you should recognize that you have to find what works, and one of those is going to work better for you. And that the amount of testosterone completely, it can stay the same, but the effect that it has if you inject less frequently completely changes your bloods as well as your response. Mike Reynolds, hey brother, can you be an over-aromatizer in the tissues even if Cerame 2 is in the sweet range? Well, let's break this down. I think that would assume that you have, it would assume that in those tissues where aromatase lies, there is somehow an abundance or hyperexpression of aromatase in those tissues. Again, if the blood isn't an accurate surrogate for the tissues, then that is possible. I would have to understand what your symptoms are or why you think that might be happening to give you an answer on that. To give you an answer if you are actually some sort of hyper tissue aromatizer. That sort of thing is not quite documented in the medical journals. So I don't really have a proven physiologic, basis to say that could exist, but it's possible. Briest. He's a hostile human, so ignorant or rude to people in comments. Do you mean Dr. Keith Nichols? I think the thing about Doc is he's very misunderstood. I happen to think he's actually a very sweet, very nice man. I have a good way of judging people, or I think I have a good compass for if people are good people or bad people. And I think it's like genuinely a fucking good person. I bet he's just a great person to his wife. I don't know if he has kids or whatever. So I think that people like that, however, can still be misunderstood and it can still make them fucking upset. So this is where we have to, whether it's Keith Nichols or anybody that I might not agree with on one topic or the other, if they're in the comment section, we have to have humanity with them and understand that they have a path that has led them to the conclusion that they have come to. So you have to respect that path. Everybody operates the best they can with the information they have and the path that is their life. So I get that he might be upset or whatever. And, that happens to people, especially when in his position, he's got a point to make and he thinks people should listen to him and people aren't. A lot of people are. I'm sure there's many people who subscribe to, Doc's theories on shit and try to employ it. And I'm sure some of them have success. But we've just got to remember that the conclusions people have come to, they didn't just make it up. They've come to those conclusions through a series of experience, in Doc's case, clinical experiences, usually a lot of research. And, if someone is really has a lot of conviction on one topic or the other, they're usually going to be somewhat emotionally volatile if they're getting either a negative response to that. Like, it's just you're protective of your stance. So we just have to remember that. Most of us know that HCG improves the sexual system when used correctly. Do you have any clients who prefer running higher tests while sacrificing the sensitivity that comes with HCG? Prefer it? Do I have any clients that prefer that? No. No. I have seen these cases where people think, all right, HCG just makes me aromatize too much, and I get side effects from it as well. So I'm going to remove it and see what happens. And then, sure enough, they don't aromatize as much. Their erections start coming back and working again. But then eventually, after a 3 to 4 week period, they end up in a state where it's the functionality of testicles cannot be dismissed as the cause of this, or a lack of functionality of testicles. However, with less HCG, you're just going to have less estrogen, and in an androgen dominant state with too little estrogen, you're going to have sexual dysfunction too. So a lot of these people that kill HCG reach a window where they're amazing, and they go, "That's it. I fucking told you I don't need to use HCG." But then that window goes south because they do need a little more estrogen, and HCG was helping that. In a lot of those cases, the best way to go about it is just to reduce the HCG dose. Again, I've got people that have gotten their wives pregnant or girlfriends pregnant on 100 IU every other day, and that's 50 IU a day of HCG. You can have about 70 to 90% testicular functionality with 62.5 IU of HCG a day. Briest. Doc Keith Nichols' video was very boring in the scene that he read AI script. Well, he probably scripted it out to present it. He did a presentation. I think that's very normal. I watched the whole thing and I watched various parts of it a couple times. I think it's extremely interesting, and the contention that serotonergic transmission in an abundance is the cause of sexual dysfunction on TRT, which is what his assertion is, in essence, is an intriguing thought. I do not think that it is conclusively scientifically supported, and I think it leaves a lot of things out. Like, again, one of his points was that estradiol is not the cause. It's only the cause of sexual dysfunction because it's facilitating serotonergic transmission in an excess quantity. And he also said that estrogen is not a direct contributor to penile hemodynamics and things of this nature, but the literature proves that wrong. He actually tried to take a piece of literature that showed us that estrogen negatively affects erections, and while in the same vein saying we should respect physiology in the literature, discounted the literature and just tried to pick the study apart. Again, to align with his views. People do that. Whether you're a doctor or not, you are absolutely, capable of being guilty of bias. But the contention that serotonin is a part of it is a very interesting notion. So it is certainly something to look into. But again, the implications there are, well, what do you do to solve that then? His was lower the dose among other things so that you reach the right threshold and serotonergic transmission. One of the things that it didn't account for is the increase in tyrosine hydroxylase expression, which would therefore from tyrosine and dopa decarboxylase synthesize more dopamine, probably originating from the ventral tegmental area of the brain, which is counter to serotonergic transmission. So there's a lot of stuff to break down in that video. And I will eventually get to it. I've just got kind of a packed schedule. I've noticed a boost in libido from the HMG that I don't seem to get with HCG alone. Have I seen this before? Yeah, I have. Yeah, I mean, something that is operating much more like gonadotropins than just a chorionic gonadotropin receptor agonist, which is what HCG is going to yield a different effect. And so, I think your body does slightly different things with HMG versus HCG. So the effect is going to be different. Yeah, E2's very close. So what Matthew's saying is my experience with 210 a week. That was daily injections and no HCG. My E2 was at 35, and my test was at like 1165. With HCG on roughly the same amount of testosterone, the estradiol is 7 points higher, but that's not enough to push me into the ED territory. The erections are quite good. But I've got just at the top of the range DHT as well, slightly over. Comparatively, this is better, right? Because for me, testicular function is critically important. I do not want, first of all, small atrophied testicles. I think that is cosmetically terrible. I think in women, most of them believe that is cosmetically terrible too. You have to understand that sex drive is a very visceral thing, and there are things that people crave. And women generally crave not like coconut size fucking balls, but they like a man with plump testicles. So that is something for me that is a no-go. At the same time, TRT alone is not hormone replacement. It is testosterone replacement. There are a bunch of other hormones, right? Talk about needing to be physiologically correct. There are many more hormones in this cascade. Testosterone is not hormone replacement therapy. It's testosterone replacement therapy merely. When you take HCG, you are executing more of a proper hormone replacement therapy protocol. That is why TRT is TRT, and TRT with HCG is actually HRT. So, it's very important. Leo from Leo and Longevity broke down how the sexual system does need, in order to be as optimal as it can be, functional testicles. I believe this to be true. And there are, again, semen quality, ejaculate volume, ejaculate signal strength. These things are all optimized by having functional testicles. All right. How can a long-ester TRT protocol be structured to better manage volatile DHT spiking while supporting libido, mood, and performance? Lowering the dose and still doing it less frequently. If you split a 70 milligram dose of testosterone, 35 milligrams, into the quads and 35 into the delts, will that cause a faster or higher peak due to the testosterone being absorbed simultaneously from two depots? This is a thing that no one's really explored. I don't think I've ever actually injected into two different places at once. So no one's explored that, is the answer to that question. And so we don't know. We don't know. I don't think anybody really knows that. I think that one thing is for sure, maybe because intramuscular injection sites are not equal. Okay. The upper glute is not equal to the delt, not equal to the ventral glute, not equal to the vastus lateralis, specifically in terms of vascularity. So yes, you might get more absorption from one side or the other, or I should say faster absorption. And that will probably change the effect. Yeah, but to the extent that we know if it will cause a faster or higher peak, I don't think anyone can conclude that by injecting in two different places at once based on what we know about the vascularity of those tissues. It would be wise to study the vascularity of each tissue. See, I've done that, and what I have concluded is that the vastus lateralis in your thigh is one of the best, or perhaps the best, for efficient uptake of testosterone. I've seen these really strange cases where people will inject the same amount of testosterone in other areas of their body, and then when they inject in their vastus lateralis, they get a different effect. How can you explain that, right? By the vascularity in that tissue. That's all. That to me is really clear. How can SHBG levels influence TRT dose, estrogen choice, and injection frequency? Well, generally there seem to be SHBG sensitive people where If it is exceptionally low, like below 10, then their free hormones increase so much that they can't actually reach a homeostatic balance in sexual function or otherwise, because they've got too much free test and they've got too much free estrogen and fucking too much free DHT. This matters, you know. Usually it's people think of it as being good to have more free hormones, but that is a very linear way of thinking, which doesn't account for the consequences of excessive free hormones, of which there are many. So I think that you want to try, like, even though I see guys at 10 SHBG and they're fine, what I generally think is that you want to have it around 20. You want to have it around 20. Yeah, you want to have it around 20. Anything that's very fast acting, like prop or cream, and that's DHT centric, like cream, is going to lower SHBG further than if you were on something slow acting like Cypionate. Haha, got my girl pregnant on 100 IU HCG. So this was the guy. Yeah, you don't need a lot of HCG. And a lot of the people that are so worried about getting on TRT because of this fertility thing, like, you know, I end up in conversations like this all the time, whether it's just someone from the street. You know, I have a effective family member who has recently expressed concern about that. And I'm like, yeah, dude, no, you'll be fine. You just take a little bit of HCG and you will absolutely be fine. New boy Fitz, got a weird one. Is there a way to maximize anabolism but lower libido? Like running 200 milligrams without having a high libido? Yeah, you could take a serotonergic drug. You could take some 5-HTP, increase your concentrations of serotonin, and you'd probably reduce your libido. You could also take some L-theanine, which increases 5-HT. It increases serotonin metabolites. So you're probably burning serotonin at a faster rate, and may actually influence the overall levels of serotonin in the brain. You could smoke kratom, and then you would be blocking the dopamine D2 receptors, therefore increasing prolactin, stopping dopamine from being able to agonize those receptors at the pituitary, the posterior pituitary, which would then allow prolactin to not be suppressed by dopamine because dopamine suppresses it. And then the prolactin would raise and your libido would absolutely fucking drop. Yep. At the same time, you could take exogenous DHT and it would block estrogen at the gene expression level, probably at the receptor level. And I think then you would also reduce your libido. Like it would be like taking an AI. At the same time, you could overshoot an AI. And get the E2 to 20 where it's not catastrophically causing you joint pain, but your libido is going to be a lot less. Do you find that when trying to use androgen pulsing in a protocol that using boluses of prop is less effective than long ester boluses? No. I just think that Cypionate is more predictable for me because I have the most experience with that. I mean, over the last 3 years since I started talking about prop, I have more experience dealing with prop than I think a lot of other people, coaches specifically, but it can also be a little difficult to dial in because the responses to test prop are volatile and extreme, in most cases, whereas the change that is happening in your body, even with a bolus of testosterone cypionate, happens less quickly, so it is therefore easier to monitor and determine what might be going on, and you're less likely to overshoot crazily or be in a place where you can't fix something you might have done wrong. Erections to come back 80% with test sip 65 milligrams 3x weekly. Okay. So it's like 190 a week. HCG 500 IU 3 times a week. That's a lot. DHT is 116, total test 1209, estradiol 76. Would I focus on lowering estradiol, raising DHT to get 100%? I think in this case, the single thing that I would do is get the estrogen to like 50, 55 and try to keep that same level of test. Now, that's going to be hard if you reduce the HCG dose, which is what I would suggest you do, because that's also contributing to some of your testosterone. So, you might be able to increase the dose to the test dose to 70 milligrams 3 times a week. Take that HCG down to like 200 IU every, 3 times a week. And then estrogen is definitely going to lower. And at that point, yes, you'll probably have better erections. This is not a bad place to be because you're kind of okay as it is. You could be one of those extreme people that need more estrogen for their androgens because you've got high androgens here and you need to take exogenous estradiol and that would help. But again, estrogen has a bunch of anti-erectile properties. So it's probably not a good idea to do that. Likely you just have to lower that HCG dose. Keep the same frequency, but lower it to 200 IU instead of 500 each time. And I bet the E2 will land at 50 something and maybe 60. And you might get your 100% at that point. If you don't, I would reduce that HCG dose further to maybe 150 every 3 times a week, or just something like 150 twice a week. Yeah, I think you should use the HCG dose as your lever here. That is absolutely your ticket to dialing in. How can free testosterone levels influence decisions about TRT dosing and injection frequency when someone is trying to solve sexual function problems? Because simply higher free testosterone is going to mean higher free everything, higher free estrogen specifically. And at the same time, higher free is usually indicative of lower sex hormone binding globulin. And what people have to understand about SHBG is that it's also a transport chemical for androgens to tissues. So, if it's being bound to by DHT and being inhibited to some large extent, it has plausibly less efficacy in transporting androgens to tissues. So those are some of the ways that it does that. I know it sounds weird, but that would really benefit me for the next 12 to 16 weeks. Yeah, lower your libido, bro. Dr. Nichols is just a curmudgeon. I've never heard that word. What the fuck does that mean, bro? Curmudgeon? What is that? Bad-tempered, cantankerous, and often stubborn person. Yeah, possibly. But, again, one of the things that you have to do, like what I did is I watched a lot of his content recently, over the last 4 or 5 months, because he said a lot of cool things about DHT that I liked and high-dosing tests in some cases. Is you have to understand the whole picture of a person, not just what you might see in a case where they have a bad temperament or a volatile temperament in the context of a disagreement on the web, whether it's an emotionally charged environment, but what is he like otherwise, and watching a lot of his content, he's actually a very mild-mannered, cool Southern dude. So I can't certainly make a blanket statement about who he is in a negative light based on some of the things that he might have been temperamental about. I honestly think he's like a fucking good dude. But that he's got a lot of, people tend to be more emotionally charged on certain topics where they have a history with them. And so Doc has a history with sexual dysfunction from SSRIs, sexual dysfunction on TRT, with the use of aromatase inhibitors for him personally, and then the journey through recognizing he shouldn't use them. So this guy's just passionate about this stuff. Again, we if he comes on the channel and comments about everything, everybody better fucking respect the dude. Okay, I don't care if you don't agree with him. Just fucking respect his opinion and recognize he went through a journey to land in his opinion, and you have to respect that. In my experience, in what ways can caffeine intake influence sexual function? Not really much at all, man. It's a vasoconstrictor, but so is nicotine. Unless you're loading it, I don't really think it's going to affect it much at all. Yeah. It's probably pro erectile, if anything. Caffeine is a real interesting chemical, dude. At the casino last night, I met a 77-year-old man who was just fucking hammering slots, high limit slots in the back in the high limit room with me. And this dude looked like 60, 65 and it was so coherent and cognitively fucking functional and looked young, maybe 77. In 3 years, he's going to be 80. And I asked him okay, just a little bit about his lifestyle. Doesn't smoke, doesn't drink. Those are the predominant fucking things that I think has allowed him to live till 77, looking young and feeling good. But also, you know what he said? He said, I drink coffee all fucking day. It's a unique molecule, man. Matthew, the video you put out on the best test dose was spot on, at least in me. Yeah, I can't be 100% accurate all the time, but you know, when you see 3,000 situations, the patterns stand out pretty clearly. That at 130 and 140 with HCG lands in the sexual speed spot with E2. Yeah, this is very, very common. Again, that's why I said that, you know, to folks. A lot of us want to run super like excessively super physiologic doses of tests because, dude, we're men. You know, the anabolism and the energy and the confidence that comes with that, it's fucking gnarly, man. But you know, you're never going to end up in the estrogen zone, you know, the zone that estrogen needs to be in for your specific physiology, for your dick to work and your libido to be primed and sensation to work. Dose in 350 milligrams a week, you know, you are then creating what is number one, an imbalance, and number two, a state in which your body was never designed to exist. So you're going to have to modulate the downstream metabolites at that point to manufacture a more balanced place. On sports TRT, I had to take Aromasin, and it worked. It was great. Like, you know, it was just that's just it. You know, calcium D-glucarate and zinc and chrysin. These things weren't actually doing it. And I'm a low normal aromatizer. So it wasn't, you know, that I need to optimize my fucking free T3. It's nonsense, man. Bump up my dose to 18 to 20 milligrams every day, and holy shit, I can't tolerate bullshit. That's toastism up. Yeah, so you're 140 a week, roughly. Yeah, I mean, there's a big change. In every change you make on TRT, there's a big psychological difference. Like down at 100 milligrams a week feels very different from 130. From 130 to 175 feels very different up here and everywhere else. You know, going to regular TRT, whatever the dose, to 300 feels fucking different. And going from any dose of TRT or even sports TRT to a cycle feels very different. Get brain fog and depersonalization when not on HCG. HCG, I feel much better. Can you explain why my mood anxiety is better while on HCG? I don't know. It depends on whether just on T or estrogen's really low, because if the HCG bring up the estrogen, that would be one reason. It helps. Estrogen's very neurologically active. There's a lot of fostering of serotonergic transmission and mood. So I think that is one possible reason for that. But at the same time, you know, the testicles and HCG itself, via binding to the luteinizing hormone gonadotropin receptors in your testicles, produce a bunch of hormones that enter your brain and modulate neurotransmitter function. So, positively too, and namely GABAergic signaling. So that's probably the reason for that. It's either one of those two. Is low dose DECA with TRT considered TRT? That would be more of like a TRT plus situation. I wouldn't call it TRT. It's not a cycle either. Thank you for the super chat, brother. Started 200 milligrams of test in Primo, 100 milligrams. Ran that for 3 weeks. Lowered Primo. So why didn't you super chat this with the super chat? If it was more, brother, you've got to figure out your finances, man. Ran that for 3 weeks, lowered Primo to 90 and getting a spike in libido. Where to go from here? Not running HCG yet. And Primo 100, ran that for 3 weeks. Lowered Primo to 90, getting a spike in libido. Yeah, so basically that Primo was inhibiting aromatase, which it does, and is probably masking your libido to some extent. The fact that now you've let off the gas a little bit on that is probably why your libido is coming back. So now you just have to dial in the dose of Primo. Keep it where it is for 2 weeks. If it's Primo enethate, it's going to take some time to balance out. And then if I were you, I would, if it's not right and libido still feels a little masked, I would reduce the dose by 10 milligram increments every 2 weeks and then monitor again for 2 weeks after you do that. That would be the answer. I know it sounds weird, but how someone with PFS knows he is on the right protocol? You know you're on the right protocol with PFS when you are consistently getting better. Libido is consistently better or consistently, you've reached a new threshold where it's like there but not perfect. Erections are there but not perfect, and you're staying there. Doesn't mean you're on the forever protocol, but it means you are in the right zone. You're heading in the right direction. And to get there, you only need to change one or two things, usually one at a time in very small doses. Or when it comes to injection frequency, you might need to just move it out a day further. But that's generally it. Like, you know, when you consistently have good function, whether it's perfect or not, that's how you know you're on at least a protocol that eventually will be right or can be modified slightly to be right. New boy fits. Any way to lower libido but still get positive neurological benefits plus max animalism, going to be sexually inactive for 8 to 10 weeks. Yeah, you already asked that. I'm not sure why you super chatted it, but again, take kratom. That'll increase your prolactin. It's going to lower your libido. Be careful, though, because that might cause erectile dysfunction, too, if it goes substantially over range. You could take loads of 5-HTP, and that's going to make you fire a bunch of serotonin transmission, make more actual quantities of serotonin in your brain, which is going to be inhibitory to dopaminergic transmission to some extent, and some of the pro-erectile neurological cascades, and it's prolactogenic, and so that will probably do it. That will do it. Wait, where am I? E9, please super chat this. Okay. If I'm going to be looking at bloods and trying to make an assessment, super chat it. The reason I ask is we're having another baby and wife will be out of commission for a month or two. Appreciate the help. Got it. Oh, okay. I understand. Gotcha. Sosa. Hi, hope you're doing great. Got a question. Is sub-Q test P only bad due to PIP? Yeah. Yeah. You could make it work pharmacokinetically and in terms of sexual function and well-being, but it burns fucking terribly. So, I mean, the way you could try to avoid that is just get it in MCT oil, but even then, it's still going to burn. Try to warm the vial up in water, hot water. You're going to have to do that for like 10 minutes before you inject it, and that tends to help. Yeah. You could ice it after. You could put a hot compression or ice it after you inject, and that might help. But yeah, it's notorious. Sub-Q is even worse because that shit's irritating. It's not just deep into the muscle. It's irritating your tissues, all that fat tissue. And you've got a lot of like nerve endings, pain sensors, if you will, in that tissue. Johnny Cook's following up with the super chat. Thank you, bro. If I am dosing HEG at 500 IU 3 times a week for fertility purposes, would I use a anastrozole instead of lowering the HEG? How would I dose a anastrozole? It would depend, man. I mean, is estrogen causing problems? Is it out of range? Do you have erectile dysfunction? Because that's the number one, like symptom of estrogen being too high is erectile dysfunction. Via its own direct mechanisms, by the way, and potentially some serotonergic mechanisms, as Doc Keith Nichols is asserting. Yeah, I don't know where you're at. So I wouldn't really be able to tell you. And only dose an anastrozole if you've got a spongy, fluffy penis that cannot get hard, but you still have libido, and you've run your labs and your estradiol is super physiologic. Then you might consider an extremely low dose, 0.006 milligrams. So it's a 0.125 milligram tablet split up in half, once every 7 days, something like that. Shane, what? Megatron, do you often see a need to space prop dosing out further than every other day? No, not often, but I have seen every third day at like 80 milligrams or 100 milligrams work better. Because again, some people are just going to need that pulse in testosterone and DHT conversion and stuff. And others do fine on daily, because the daily with prop is enough, because it's like, it does substantially shoot your numbers up. Is this reasonable aromatization? So here's a protocol where user is trying to see, do I aromatize reasonably here? 200 milligrams Cypionate, doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday injections. Oh, and Saturday, 50 milligrams, 1597 total. Okay. 6072, that is under aromatizing. Yeah. That is low normal. That's like, I think I would probably be a little higher. I would personally, but I don't see HCG in your protocol here. So that could be why. I think it's about normal. So if you were at 1,000, I bet the E2 would be like 30, 35, maybe 40 max. And I think you'd be dialed in there. But again, if you need HCG, that's going to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench in there. And I don't know if you have it in your protocol, so I can't tell you. If you do have it in your protocol, you're an under aromatizer. Low, normal, low. If you don't have it, or if you don't have it in your protocol, that's about right. Silrock, this is my first time catching one of your lives. You're doing an unreal job. Thank you for sharing knowledge. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, man. I'm glad to have you here. On 200 milligrams test a week and 106 estradiol picograms per milliliter, 35.3 total T. That's what nanomolars. You need to convert this into nanograms per deciliter total test or picograms per milliliter estradiol. I think you're from the UK or somewhere. Yeah. I think so. But if it's 200 milligrams test a week and you're at 106 estradiol, and the top of that range, which I think you're referring to, is 250. So that's pretty low end estradiol. Yeah, try to convert this into nanograms per deciliter for test and picograms per milliliter for estradiol. I also do not have your actual measurements here, so no one can tell. Yeah, you can't say Canadian units. Break it down in what your PDF of your Quest or LabCorp thing is saying. Would avoid kratom at all costs. Probably the most habit-forming substance. Yeah, again, I mean, I was just giving the guy suggestions on what he could do to lower libido. I think that's a haphazard question to ask. Why would you want to lower your libido? It's a bad idea. Anything that lowers libido is a bad idea, dude. But he wanted to know, so you know, I gave him the answer, brother. I gave him the answer, brother. My week in dealing with the casinos has been good. My week prior, I made a couple mistakes and lost, and that was my bad. I actually know better. But this week I hit for 12.5 on River's floor, the casino floor in the high limit room, at a very modest bet, $25 bet, at a double minor. The profit was 10.5 from that, so I was 2K in, and profited, I don't know, 1,000 yesterday and 2,600 before. So I've made about $14,000 in the last 7 days. It's been a good week. I got to say that at least for me, sub-Q test P is not causing PIP whatsoever. Well, that's wonderful. Maybe the love handle is the fucking place to put it, dude. Just right down there in that fat. Yeah, it might be something for folks to take heed to, dude. That if you don't want debilitating post-injection pain from test prop, put it in your love handle, man. I don't know. Yeah, the test prop that gave me PIP was belly fat, thigh. Pretty bad PIP. Pretty bad PIP. I also had one time I injected about 100 milligrams of prop in my vastus lateralis, and that PIP had migrated to my knee and caused me to have knee pain. Prop is, gotta be careful with that stuff, man. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ester if you can make it work. And it offers hope to people that are having a hard time dialing in on long esters because of their pharmacokinetic profile. The long esters pharmacokinetic profile, and prop can really work, man. I've seen people just try everything with Cypionate and Enthate. I could dial them in on that, but they just decided prop was it, and I feel like they're on TRT finally with just using prop. All right, Fitz, I got you here. Yeah, so if you had, going back to your question, am I a reasonable aromatizer on 1597 total T with 67 E2? If you have no HCG, yes, that's a reasonable response. Yep. Yeah, that is a very reasonable response right there. What is your sexual function like? I'm curious. Is it okay or what? Just use an insulin pen, brother, says somebody. Shane. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. You're talking about the PIP with prop. Whether you use an insulin pen or not, you're having PIP with prop. The needle does not matter. The needle does not make a difference. All right, it's the substrates within testosterone propionate that cause you to have post-injection pain. They're very irritative to your tissue. Help, I wasted a blood test. Where'd that question go? You retracted it, but I already got it up, brother. Too late. Wasted a blood test I had a couple of hours after my daily test injection. Yeah, can't help you there because it got cut off. Yes. Yes, brothers. Brothers. Yes, brothers. Yes, brothers. Yes, brothers. Hope you guys are great, man. I don't know what you guys plan to do for the rest of the day, but hope where you are is nice. It's a nice day here for the most part. It's going to be like warm, 70s, like high 70s, I want to say today. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. Looking forward to summer stuff, man. Just being able to go outside more. I've been outside a lot lately, and it's been really wonderful. I mean, I've been in the casino lately, so that's not outside. By the way, holy shit, in the high limit room and in the smoking section, you're just getting blasted with nicotine, just blasted. Yeah, me and my girl were there yesterday, and like she left at 8 and I stayed till about 10, and we were both at a certain point like just affected by all the fucking smoke in the room. When are you hitting the lake? Well, I think that Memorial Day is when everything opens. So like the moment that Memorial Day passes and the campground's open and the fucking lake's open and shit, then that's going to be water time. Yeah, I'm excited. Super chat this. Again, I'm not going to go back to your question with all due respect and like do that. Super chatter, brother. Sexual function was solid on the 200 milligrams. Erections and libido were very good. Climax intensity was 6 of 10. Adding in an additional cream sometimes really ramped that back up to normal. Well, then it seems as if you're probably one of those people that like, although with the right HCG dose, I bet you can make climax intensity 10 of 10 because that's essentially one of the things that it is good at doing. But you may not need it. If you can put up with the cosmetic deficiency of small testicles and stuff, then great. You get to rock fucking 1,600 total test and feel like a god and have the muscle protein synthesis that fucking mere mortals can't have. Nor people on moderate doses of TRT. You got more muscle protein synthesis than me. I'm at about 1,100 total test. 1,100. So your work at the gym is going to be of a higher expected value than mine, just because your ability to synthesize lean tissue is greater. So if you can sustain that, great. So long as your hematological and lipid markers are not out of whack, blood pressure, things like that, then I think you are good to go, brother. All right, boys, I'm going to end the stream. I got some stuff I got to tend to. Great fucking questions. Much more content coming this week, so look forward to it. Again, coaching, 3 and 6 month packages are booked, but if you need to get on board, you can email me at ryan@livecortex.com, and I will consider bringing you on board, but I cannot leave that option on the website because it will book me into oblivion to the point where I can't urinate throughout the day because I'm so busy. So please keep that in mind. There is one new TRT consult. It is an 8-point TRT protocol audit. You can book me for that in under a minute at livecortex.com. Mastering Libido and Erections is a digital playbook I created that shows you how to dial in on every ester. That is also in the description or at livecortex.com. Whether it's Cypionate or Cream, I built video courses on how to dial those in. They are down in the description of this video. And you can hire me for sexual function consults as well down in the description of this video. Brothers, I will talk to you this week. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Peace.